Everyone. I have my amazing client, Grace Izquierdo, with us today. She's here in Miami, Florida, and she recently had a huge success with a for sale by owner. And when I learned about it, I said, Girl, you have to tell everybody about this because it's just amazing. So, Grace, first, let me ask you because I know you've been in sales X training for a little while.
Yes.
Um, like, when did you actually start calling FISBOs? Just it's okay if it's recent because I know it takes time. But when did you start calling?
So honestly, this is my third year in real estate. Thank you, by the way, for having me.
Yeah.
And from day one, I started my thought process over for sale by owners was actually when I first came into the business, I said, what is the toughest thing that I can possibly call? And they're like, oh, for sale by owners. And I'm like, okay, great, sign me up. Because I figured, if I worked and learned with for sale by owners, I can probably, call my own sphere, which I was more afraid of calling. So I used to follow you before you even had Silk training. So you've been a big, big part of it. So I would say probably a little bit over a year. Consistently, though, I can genuinely tell you that as soon as I signed up for your program, Sales X Training, it was like opening up the new doors of everything I didn't know. So
Mhm.
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, of course. I love hearing success stories. So you told me you listed how much is this FISBO? 1.7, 1 point, how much is it?
So this one was at 1.71. This was actually a phenomenal story.
I know. Okay, so tell us from the beginning. You call this FISBO, and you're in Miami, so obviously right here in
Mhm.
Miami. I'm in Miami too. This is the largest board of realtors in the United States. There are more agents here than anywhere else, and I know this for sale by owner, like all the others, they get hundreds of calls from Will City. So you call this FISBO. Tell us, how did it go?
Yeah. So I called this for sale by owner and I said, hi, this is Grace. I'm calling in regards to the property. And I went through the script and he's like, okay, well, the house is for sale. You have some pictures, just look that up. And I'm not looking to sign with any agent. So they tell you this right up front, right after you tell them who you are. They have thousands of people calling them. And basically
Did
they just
say all that to you. Yes.
absolutely, absolutely. And so that was it, and I said, okay, great. I'm looking at some pictures. Tell me a little bit about, the property we went into. And then of course, the whole idea of your training, hey, by the way, is commission the biggest objection or the biggest reason that you are selling on your own?
Hmm.
And so I went straight for the question.
Yes. And one thing that you told me this morning, you said, which I'm like, Grace, this doesn't even sound possible or true. Like people hearing this are going to say, what? This FISBO you said had sold 47 houses. Like, what is this? I mean, how does somebody sell 47 houses? Why is he selling so many houses on his own? Do you know why?
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, that's exactly how he responded. And he says, I've sold 47 houses on my own. I know exactly what I'm doing. And, basically, it led me to believe that he's worked with other agents in the past and that I guess the experience wasn't all that, to his expectations. And he says, I know exactly what I need to do. So, just bring me the buyer and we'll work through this. And again, I'm not looking to list with anybody. And that was it. I mean, and I said, wow, fascinating. 47 properties. I mean,
Right. Is this guy an investor? Like, why did he, who sells 47 properties on their own? Do you know? Did he?
yeah, absolutely. So he is part investor and this was his primary home. So I asked him and I said, well, with somebody with such an amazing track record. And so I asked and I said, is this your primary home or is this an investment property?
Yeah.
Because I figured, if he sells it, maybe I can basically try to help him with the next property he's looking
Yeah.
for.
Yeah. Yeah. So that first call, like what, how did it end?
And so it ended. He says to me, well, and so I asked him, and I said, you know, what are the arrangements? And he said, well, you know, you can come by and take a look at the property if you want, and if you have any buyers that match it, I'll be more than happy to work with you, and I'll give you X% and so forth. Like, this guy knew the script, you know, very well on his end on what to do to, you know, basically just not sound as motivated. And I said, you know, so and so, sounds like a great opportunity. Thank you so much. And while I'm there, you know, would you be open to having a conversation on, you know, what it can take to list your property? And so he says to me, oh, no, no, so forth and so on. I said, okay. So what I did was basically just, you know, I didn't want to go for a preview. I don't believe in previews. Like, I mean, I know that this is, you know, very controversial. I've heard some people have some successes with it. I can tell you, Jackie, the moment I literally track everything, right? So I'll track exactly the people that I talked to that I went in for a qualified listing appointment, or, you know, prior to sales X training, all the people that I went for a preview, and I have never landed anybody that I went in for a preview,
Okay, well,
which
that's
is
that's
amazing.
good for me to hear.
Yeah.
And like you said, some people do have success. I mean, some people list after a preview,
Sure.
but it's just so much work and so much time. And what are the odds, right? So
Right.
you end up going there. What happened? Tell us.
So he said to me, you know, he said that that there was something about me, how persistent and how professional I sounded. It seemed like I sounded different from the bajillion other realtors that were calling him, and that was actually verbatim what he said. So, and I said, thank you so much, so and so. You know, just it'll only take about 20 minutes of my time, of your time. You can obviously show me your beautiful property. I'm sure the pictures do no justice, of course. And then I sat down and I went for a qualified listing appointment.
Okay, and then what happened? He didn't
Then,
like
of course,
that day. You said.
no, no, he gave me the let me think about it scenario. And then first, of course, prior to going to the appointment, I wanted to make sure that all decision makers were going to be present. He says there's no one else but myself, and I said wonderful. And so when we got there, his objection just kept going, and I'm just so grateful to be so prepared, right?
Mm.
Because he says to me, well, I have to run this by my fiance. You know, she's a numbers person. And I said, oh, perfectly valid. And I said, you know, so and so, hypothetically speaking, right? If, what do you think she would want to ask? What do you think she's thinking about? And he says, well, you know, and so the objection came up again, obviously commission, right? And I said, okay, valid point. And I said, based on the explanation that I've given you, are you 100% confident that I am able to deliver exactly what I have presented to you today? And he says, absolutely. He had actually, from what he had told me, met with other agents as well. And I actually, before leaving that appointment, locked down an official follow-up time frame. Like, when can I come back and follow up with you? So yeah, I wasn't gonna let that one go.
And when did you go back, and when did he list?
So he's like, oh, just give me a few. And then I listed within no more than a week. No more than a week. He signed.
Okay, what do you think actually? Obviously, you said that he told you that you sounded different than other agents. What do you think was the tipping point? Why do you think he listed with you when there's literally hundreds of agents calling this guy?
Well, for one, you know, you actually have a conversation with these people, right? And you once you're in that presentation, you understand and you start uncovering, you know, the motive underlining the motive, right? So you can go in there over the phone, they'll tell you why they want to sell and so forth and so on. And then you uncover the true reasons. And so part of the listing presentation uncovers that. The other thing that he actually gave me feedback on, because I did ask, I mean, the guy's, yeah, he sold 47 homes, and here I am listing his property, which I think is a phenomenal.
Yes.
Uh, he said how prepared I was. I come in with my listing stats. I show him what for sale by owners will actually list for. at about 87%, 85% of the market. I showed him the, for sale by owner statistics based on NAR, and I have all that updated. And then the other thing I also showed him was my own personal track record, right? And so, and then everything else I do as well, throughout the sale of the process of the home. So I think it was a matter of showing him the value, but being organized, right, and being prepared to answer the questions as they come up.
Right. And not only that, anticipating the questions. I mean, you know what FISBOs, they want to save the commission. They want to be able to net more money. So you got to handle all of that. You talked to them about that over the phone.
Yeah.
So you listed it, and then you decided to have an open house and door knocks around the open house to invite the neighbors. So tell us what happened then.
So I met the neighbors. I door knocked that day about 40 to 45 homes, and took me about a couple hours, honestly, because you just have a conversation, let them know, and now they're excited because they obviously see the house for sale, and then one of them calls me to set up an appointment.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And
But you told me like somebody that wasn't even home that you left.
that's true. That's true. So what I do is I prepare the flyers, right? The open house flyers, and I love having conversations with the neighbors. And so if they're not home though, what I'll do is I'll prepare the open house flyer and I'll leave it at their doorstep, kind of like with a little door hanger, plastic bag or something that just goes in and you put in the flyer. You don't
Yeah.
have to do anything else. You leave your information, and basically it's there saying you're invited to, the open house on Saturday when not. So this, I guess the neighbors, I mean, they all are seeing, the work that you're doing, especially in today's market. So we had a phenomenal open house, and they saw all the activity. And within like 2 days after that open house, I get a call, and I really thought it was a fake call. Like it was surreal. And he says to me, you listed my neighbor, and I've been looking for the perfect real estate agent, and I love the way you've marketed this property. I would love to have a conversation with you because I'm ready to sell. And at first I'm like, okay. Like I had to literally look him up on miamidade.gov, make sure I was talking to the right person.
Oh my
I really
goodness.
couldn't believe this is happening.
And that property was how much?
So that property is we are going at 870.
870,000. So
Yes.
the one that you listed, is it under contract yet?
Yes, it went under contract and I closed, and
Mm.
it was phenomenal because I got a sign call on that one. Should I even tell
I'm
you?
like, this is really crazy. You sent me an email about this, and I'm like, I personally, and I've listed, so many FISBOs in my career. I never had one phone call that made me as much money as this FISBO call made you. So
Yeah.
then you get a sign call, and what happened?
So I get a sign call and I said, they're like, well, we would love to see the property. I'm here thinking, because, little skeptical Grace here comes out again. And I said, sure, we start having a conversation. I showed them the property. They loved it. And they placed an offer for the property. And so we just closed. So that basically was a combined sale of 1.71. But here's where, so yeah, so I got both sides of it right. And so now here I am, 1.71 plus 870. I don't even know the math anymore. But then here's what, then they called me the next day and they said, Grace. And I said, yes. And they're like, there's this beautiful, there's this property I'd like you to take a look at. We really like it and we want to place an offer. So they loved with the whole handling of that procedure. And then we just went under escrow at a 1.75
Um,
in like 1 week or
I
two.
mean, literally incredible. It's just amazing, amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. From one for sale by owner call. And you're not done with this yet. Who knows how many more transactions you're going to do as a result of this one phone call, because
Yeah.
this is happening as we speak.
So it's funny you mentioned that because what I didn't tell you is
Yes,
so wait,
tell
there's
me
more.
that.
So the neighbor for this for sale by owner happens to be a contractor. And apparently when he invited me, because I was door knocking, of course I door knocked his home because it's one of the nicest ones out there. And they said, we got to sell this property. He's like, no, we just remodeled, so forth and so on. And turns out that this buyer is actually going to be utilizing the neighbor that they also met, the contractor, which I met at the new location that is currently under contract. And he's aware of me taking on the new listing and potentially just told me about, in the future listing his.
Wow.
So it's, yeah.
This is so exciting. This is going to be one of the greatest Fizbo stories. The greatest one I've heard, and there's more coming from it.
Yeah.
So, Grace, what would you say to agents? Because a lot of agents, I don't, they have a fear of speaking with Fizbos. They don't want to call for sale by owners. What kind of advice would you give? I mean, it's easy for you to say now because obviously you're riding this huge success and you're so excited about it. But think about a brand new real estate agent and they're afraid of calling Fizbos. What advice would you give them?
I would say, read the scripts and internalize them. The other thing I am going to say is no matter at least in my humble opinion, right? The first call is always the hardest one to make. And once you get past that, the second and the third are just fine. For sale by owners, again, right? It's expectations. So realize that they're doing this because they either want to save the commission or chances are they had a not so great, relationship or experience with someone. So once we get past that and understand this is not personal, this is not about us directly, if you're prepared and you're ready to ask the right questions and answer what to expect, then you should be fine. I mean, just believe in your ability, and there's no reason why you can't be successful.
And I think one of the things that agents need to hear, because they're afraid, a lot of clients, and I've been coaching for a long time, they have fear of rejection. They don't want to hear a no. They don't want to hear an objection. They're afraid of hearing an objection and not knowing how to handle it.
Yeah.
So, I always say, get used to the idea that you're going to get objections and you won't know what to say. I mean, we all go through that. It's part of learning. But also, every FISBO you talk to say yes, list with you.
Oh,
How does it go?
Oh no. I love rejection. The reason I say yeah, I do. It's super weird because at first, I realized that this is failure, but I realized failure wasn't a thing for me. So I realized it's a learning opportunity, right? So like you say, these calls are worth, whatever X number of dollars in commissions it is for your market. So the way that I handle it is, what was the no that got me to hang up, right? And then write that down, just like you said, write that down. Become really good at coming back because it's not going to be the first time you hear this, So
yeah, and not the last one for sure. Yeah, it's always the same thing. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, like this one. Okay, he sold 47,000 properties. So what's got you selling, number 48? And so if you're actively listening and you for whatever reason, get a no, that's okay. Find out what that no was that you couldn't overcome and just go right back. Like for instance, I mean, literally I've had conversations with for sale by owners where I've called back and I've told them, I'm like, are you still upset? Or hey, by the way, how's that going for you? Or by the way, you mentioned that, you were receiving a verbal offer. Like, how's that going? Just write down something that you actively remember so that you can just stand out just a little bit and be that much better until you get the yes.
You know why I'm smiling, Grace? Because you hadn't told me all of this, but you're actually saying things that I teach. I'm like, oh, maybe she's actually listening to. She's heard the lessons. She's actually like, okay, this is good. I like it. I love it.
Exactly what you teach is what it is. Like,
Okay,
I
that's
mean,
good to know. I mean, I don't know how much of what I say you're actually doing, but you're telling me when whatever objection it is that ends the call, write it down so you can. I say it exactly like that. Like, I'm like, okay. She said, "Oh, I'm so
yeah,
happy to
I've
help."
learned about all that. And I'm not kidding. I mean, I literally walk the talk. I mean, I can show you, all the, here it is. Here's my like tracking sheet. So,
And
you know,
there you go.
you
Well,
don't know until you have clarity, right? So,
exactly. Great. The challenge now is just to make the calls every day, huh?
yes. So not everything is, fluffy around in this industry and things can get in the
Now you
way.
got all these transactions and clients,
Call
right?
it a day.
You told me last week you're hiring an assistant because obviously you need help.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you can delegate some of the admin work and you can continue bringing in these visible listings because they obviously need your help and you can continue to have this amazing success. That's where it's
Yes.
at, girl.
Yes.
Very good. Well, thank you. This is great. And so have you added up how much volume you've done from that one FISBO call?
We're at a 4.3 here. I'll tell you right now. So
4 million
plus 175. So
approximately.
um uh I would say plus 8.0. Yeah, like 4.3.4. What's it?
3.4 million.
4.3. 4.3.
4.3 million.
Yeah.
$4.3 million from one phone call and coming and more coming.
Yeah,
It's
I'm so
amazing.
excited. I'm so excited. It's a real thing.
Yeah, well, you're probably a little more excited than I am, but believe me, it makes me so happy to hear this stuff because I told you honestly, that's why I do what I do. Every real estate agent can have the success if they just learn what to do and do it. Yeah, and
Thank
stay consistent. Then success is consistent too. Thank you.
Yes.
Girl. You're amazing. I'll see you soon.
you. Thank you for having me. Bye.
Bye.